think we have at least 3 current or former ASOR trustees here. Professor Beth Alpert Nakai, who's also in the Judaic Studies department, was on our board during the time Ed was talking about having things be transformed. To her left is Professor Joe Sager, who was the director of the Cobb Institute at Mississippi State and has just moved here in the last few months. And any of you who've been a part of organizations that have changed know that the leadership is a team effort, and we're fortunate to have developed and grown and be doing good work because of a lot of volunteers who wanted to work for the good of the organization and not get credit themselves. It's also a real pleasure to be here at the University of Arizona because ASOR has probably 20 senior scholars or mid-career scholars who are leading the organization that have direct ties to various programs here. And that ranges from, I'm only going to mention a few names because I can't remember the 28 people who did their Ph.D. here and the 30-some people who've come through the program. But an undergraduate came through this program, I think did a master's, is now, I think has, part of his title is Distinguished Professor at University of California, San Diego. Tom Levy was an undergraduate here. So for those of you who are undergraduate students, there's a long tradition of people coming through the program and being involved in our organization. And there are 20 professors who have who are involved in ASOR and involved in Middle Eastern archaeology who did their PhD here. Professor William Deaver was one of the main professors that brought them through. And it's hard to think of a school that has 20 professors involved in leading a field. So you've really helped the entire field, and we're grateful for that. I am from Maine. I live on an island in Maine, and it is snowing there and icy there today. So I am very happy to be here in Tucson today. I made the mistake last night of telling my wife that it had only gotten up to 85, so I wasn't she was not very happy with me. But it's really nice to be here, not only because of the great colleagues and the tradition your program has had, the weather has been really spectacular as well. As Ed said, this is a talk that I hope you will find interesting and engaging. It is a depressive topic as well. I plan to end on some positive notes because there's things that we can all do, and part of what the whole purpose of this talk is describing what can we do now. But the first question is, the destruction is horrifying. What are we doing, or what can we do? I'm not going to, this is the a site in Iraq where one of the monuments to the prophet Jonah was blown up and destroyed. This is the old city of Aleppo, and because of the warring that's taken place, what we see here is sort of a consequence of two things. On the one side, the opposition forces are trying to fight against the Assad regime, so they use what are called tunnel bombs. They dig into the fortifications of the Assad regimes, they place bombs, and they blow them up. The Assad regime has helicopters, and they can drop barrel bombs out of those. So they systematically, in fighting a war, they're not trying to destroy cultural heritage. They're fighting a war. You see the old city of Aleppo just being torn apart. This is more recent, and I'll come back to it. This is the area of Palmyra, settlement of Tadmor, and this is a photograph from just a few weeks ago This is a result of either the Syrian regime or another country that would have airplanes making bomb strikes. We'll come back to which countries have airplanes, but it's in order for ISIL, well, in the process of ISIL being driven out of Palmyra, there was a lot of destruction that took place. And here is a mosque and a place of worship that is now destroyed. So in the midst of all this, people have asked the question, why are you conducting a cultural heritage project when people are dying, people are starving, and as we've seen, people are fleeing Syria, going anywhere that they can find that's safe? And in fact, the first comment on social media that was made when we announced that we had received this grant from the State Department was all excited to read the first comment, and I went on and the person said, why are you doing this when people are being killed and people are starving? Why are you caring about culture? And it was a humbling question, but it's one that I think we need to really think seriously about. And the answer is really why we applied for this funding. In our application, we said this was an international coalition or collaboration to document the damage in Syria. And the reason it was an international collaboration was we wanted to show the Syrian people, and later it was expanded to Iraq, the Iraqi people, that this international group of scholars and citizens cared about them as people and cared about their culture, and not just caring about them for their economic assets or the military strategic location of their country. And we felt it was vital to show the people of Syria and Iraq that the international community cares about them and that their culture is important, especially because some of the people, and not all, who were destroying this culture are fighting an ethnic and cultural war. So that was our goal from the very beginning, and I'm going to explain the different parts of the project and what we're doing to try to make some gains there. There are three parts of the project: documenting damage, promoting global awareness, and planning for emergency and post-war responses. I'm glad to say that today we actually have some hope that we may be carrying out some of these things in the coming weeks or the coming year. When I gave this talk about 8 weeks ago, I was not as hopeful that we were going to be doing anything right away. So I'm glad that there has been some change. So documenting damage. We collect information from all sorts of sources, and I'm going to go, rather than having you read them, I'm going to go through and show you slides describing what they are. One is it's not safe for us to go into Syria or ISIL-controlled areas of Iraq and document damage. It's also not safe for us to ask people who live in those areas to go in and document damage and be in direct communication with us where that communication might be tracked. So one of the main ways that we document damage is to use satellites and take pictures of various places, and we have a group of specialists who are archaeologists trained in GIS, who I think we probably have 3 full-time equivalent employees who work 40 hours a week or more analyzing satellite imagery and seeing what we can find. We also scour the web. The DGAM stands for the Directorate General of Antiquities and Museums of the Syrian government. It's part of the Assad regime. There are people who are working for the DGAM who are not political. They're sacrificing their safety to go and protect the heritage and the culture of the Syrian people. And they put a lot of imagery and a lot of reports on the web. A lot of them have some English translations. we have probably 3 full-time equivalent people on our project who translate Arabic, and we're scouring the web for Arabic language reports about what is taking place. This is Nimrud showing the destruction that happens there. So this is one way we can track the reports that ISIL has said they have destroyed various areas. We can look at dated photographs. This is the area where you see there's some destruction. Another area. This was what ISIL showed on their website. That's where it was taking place. This one you unfortunately see between just 2 weeks later. This is the palace compound, and now there's not much left. That's because these were barrel bombs that were placed up, and that's the destruction that took place. And now, in the satellite imagery, this is what you see. I'm going to digress a little here. Someone asked a question at the sort of meet and greet time about why ISIL blows up some things and sells other things. What we've come to conclude is that if they are objects that are small enough that can be sold, they will transport them somewhere and try to sell them. They're also engaged in cultural warfare. So if they're objects that are too large to sell, this is part of their propaganda, and they're blowing up entire monuments. They're not advertising the fact that they're plundering and systematically excavating other artifacts and selling them to support their work. But that's sort of their methodology. This is the site of Apamea, and you can see the before photograph here. And unfortunately, in 2011, now this is important to point out, this is before ISIL, but there's systematic looting that is taking place after the Civil War has begun. So one of the things that our team of geospatial specialists has done is to examine these maps, and unfortunately the lighting's not, can we turn the lights down right up front here? The color coding, you can see, we try to track when the various looting and damage is taking place. This is the site of Dura Europus. Again, you see very systematic looting that is taking place. And we're able to track down the looting that was from 2014, and then in 2015, this would be after ISIL. But this is a site that's been systematically dug before. There are also people in Syria going out with metal detectors and just trying to find objects in the ground. So this graph shows from the first year of the project, there were 711 heritage damage incidents that we documented. And looting was the biggest factor. Combat was the next. Digging would be things like agriculture or digging for a military installation. So those are some of the most common ones. From the first quarter of year 2, this is 3 months, you see that the numbers are lower, but the percentages are pretty much the same. So we're finding in year 2 of our project, the causes of the damage are pretty much the same as we go from year to year. Another part of what we're doing is not just documenting the damage, but coming up with an inventory of historic places and sites. And the goal here is to have an inventory that the Syrian people can use when there's stabilization. The DJM right now has an inventory that's actually less than half of this. And our goal is to include built heritage in addition to archaeological sites. But this is what we've, from the first 18 months of our project, this is what we've been able to document. This one shows, it's a little easier to see with the satellite image. This includes ISIL-controlled areas of Iraq as well. And again, the progress of our first 18 months. This next one shows the areas where there's severe damage. It shows where there's damage. And what's very depressing is you see there are about 1,900 sites that we found that have some damage. I think there were 700 that had either moderate or severe or more. So this is shows the state of things right now. Documenting the damage is an important part. It's a good academic exercise. But really the payoff is in the last two areas, and I've tried to show these as they circle back on themselves. Promoting global awareness is letting the people of Syria and Iraq see that the international community cares about them and cares about their culture. It's letting people in Europe, the United States, and in the Middle East too, see what is really taking place and the devastation that's taking place. It's also fighting looting and the trade of antiquities. I've been amazed that at presentations that we've given, that our team members have given, some of the public ones in larger cities, New York and Chicago, there are members of the antiquities trade, or especially the coin trade, that really are very antagonistic. This was not my field. I'm a biblical scholar, so it's sort of strange that I've moved in. I have done archaeology. I've never worked in Syria. I used to publish, and I still do publish ancient inscriptions, but I was shocked at the antagonism and vigor and energy that people in the coin trade and the antiquities trade brought about, trying to minimize what was taking place. And I think that it's important for us to show, and we'll show some slides later, beyond a doubt, the illegal sale of antiquities is supporting terrorism. And beyond a doubt, some of those antiquities are finding their way into the United States. Whether it's a big number or a small number, that we can debate. But that, I think, is an important part of the global awareness piece that we're trying to show the world. And I'm hopeful that people, because I've met with people in the antiquities trade in auction houses and other places, I think the majority want to be reasonable, and I think we can work together, which is sort of a controversial thing for a scholar to say, because sometimes they say you shouldn't talk to any people elsewhere. But I think we have to be practical. So what are we doing to promote global awareness? I encourage you to go to our website, SyrianHeritage.org, and there are weekly reports that are up on our website. Right now, the last one is through March 15th, 83, 84. 85, 86, going through the end of March, will probably be posted in a few weeks. We have about a 2-week delay in posting the reports because we have colleagues and other agencies read them to make sure that we have taken out any references that might identify someone who lives in an area where they could be in harm's way. So it takes about 2 weeks for us to have the people who need to read it, and then we post the redacted report. We hope to be able to. We of course are saving the other reports, and there's really just we don't include any names anyway, but we try to really take out any references where someone could be identified. There's somewhere around 3,500 pages of reports that have been published in the last 18 months. So there's a lot of information. If you don't want to read 3,500 pages, each one has a summary of key points that is taking place and a reference of where you can go. But after the war is over, this will also be a nice historical document to see what has taken place. This graph shows you a little more because it's hard to read. You hear 3,500 pages. This is in the last 3 months where the incident reports are from in the weekly report. And so you see all the way from Baghdad in Iraq, mainly it's in ISIL-controlled areas of Iraq, and in Syria is where the reports are taking place. Palmyra and Damascus are, of course, where many of the pages come from. This map, if you can turn the lights down for just a second, is for the first 18 months, the different types of reports of where everything that has taken place. And so it's sort of hard to see, but you'd see that there are a lot of archaeological sites, there are monuments, there are archives and museums, and we're trying to document all of these and not just one particular time period or one particular type of site. We also are producing special reports, and we're going to try to do more of these where our funding from the State Department doesn't pay for many of the special reports, and so we've worked with some private foundations to try to synthesize things more. One of the reports that will be coming out either today or tomorrow is what has been taking place in Palmyra since ISIL was driven out. And I'll come back to that topic in a little bit in the presentation, because there's a lot of misinformation that is floating around. Various groups, whether they're the opposition to the Assad regime, and ISIL, they're all blaming the other groups and all trying to use the destruction of cultural heritage as part of their political propaganda. So our goal is we're apolitical, and we're not trying to support one side or another, but to try to, in an academic way, describe what has taken place. And I think that this is a reference that's much better than what the media portrays, although they also do a very good job. So looking at the site of Palmyra, this is something one of the sites that if either Aleppo or Palmyra were probably the two sites in Syria that you would have known about before the war. Unfortunately, when ISIL moved in, this was a case where they very systematically tried to sell objects from Palmyra, but when they moved in, they set up explosives at some of the key sites, and you knew that there was a plan to blow these sites up at some point. And that's what we see. So between June 15th and June 26th last year, they started systematically destroying sites. Now here's another place, the monastery of Mar Elian, where they destroyed a Christian site. These are graves in Tadmor, and we've heard stories that relatives of the citizens who were buried there were made to go and work and tear apart the graves. This was an effort to desecrate the graves of the people who were viewed as leaders in a form of Islam that was not supportive of what ISIL thinks Islam should be. This is the Temple of Baal at Palmyra, and unfortunately, a few months later, or this picture is several years old, but in September we see all that was left of the Temple of Baal. One of the reports we did before Palmyra was taken, we worked fiercely to get this report written because we knew ISIL was on the way there. We read a report on what's the importance of Palmyra and why the international community should fight to save it. Well, the international community doesn't have a lot of motivation to save it because the only way would have been to put troops on the ground to save the site. And the Western countries, for better or for worse, are not going to go that route. But one of the reports, if you want to learn more, described what the city of Palmyra was. And we tried to, in a fairly short, I think it was about 12 pages, map out from satellites where the key features were and describe what they were and why they were important. Unfortunately, if you compare, and I don't have one that is the same scale, but if you look just 6 months later, many of the places that are marked here are gone, and that's the result of the deliberate destruction. Here you see the Temple of Baal. More recently, and this is just in the past few weeks and past few months, this is the part that we're still trying to determine what has taken place and what's not. So if any of you are in the press, I ask that you not publish this. We're actually going to take this out. It will be published on our website within a week. But around the area of Tadmor and around Palmyra, Tadmor is the modern town, this is a list of the religious sites that have been destroyed since late 2015 up until just a couple weeks ago. All of these are as a result of airplane strikes. Now, as you might imagine, there are only two groups that have airplanes, and that would be the Syrian regime and the Russians. And so there is debate as to who's responsible for these strikes. Part of the reason we're writing a special report on Palmyra and what's taken place in the last 2 weeks or last month is there have been a flurry of emails and social media posts by members of the opposition group blaming the Syrian regime on systematically destroying Palmyra and being responsible for the destruction there. We feel that, or we've concluded that everyone's to blame. And so we're trying to go through and not just blame either the Russians or the Assad regime, but just describe what has taken place. The sad thing is, in this effort to drive ISIL out, more than a few of these strikes on mosques took place on Fridays. So they were at a time when militants would have been in the mosque, when a strike would have resulted in damaging a militant group. But as you might imagine, if you bomb a mosque on a Friday, you're also killing civilians and children at the same time. And so this is a real tragic part of the story that the news media hasn't picked up and reported yet. That's helps us understand why the people in ISIL-controlled areas are, now that they've been liberated, the side effects or the casualties are rather great as well. Here's some more pictures that we've posted on our Facebook page just this last week. This shows some tombs around the area of Tadmor, the modern village around Palmyra, showing tombs that were important for Islamic leaders in the area, Islamic leaders who did not practice a form of Islam that ISIL feels was the appropriate one. So if you look at the difference between September 2nd, you see Several of them have been destroyed. The news media says it doesn't say very much about this. They're publicizing the Temple of Baal and the ancient sites, but for the people of Tadmor, these tombs are just as important, maybe more important than the Roman city. That here you have in March 30th, that's just a few days ago, the even more damage that we've seen. So as ISIL was on the withdrawal, more of the tombs were destroyed. Another area of promoting awareness is each week we publish a heritage timeline. So if you're doing a research paper or you're wanting to look back at the issue, the conflict that's taken place, we have links to reports that we've written, but also other places where, from ABC News to Arabic language reports and other ones of all the damage and reports that have taken place. And this is where we draw our weekly reports from. Another way we promote global awareness is by giving talks like this. It's very important to let the public know what is going on, and as you'll see in a minute, talk about what we can all do together to help fight this problem. We are sponsoring public events. Unfortunately, we haven't, just in 2 weeks, some of the ASOR board members who are going to be there. We have 2 events, one taking place at the Elliott School. We're going to be summarizing the first 18 months of work, but also announcing a new crowdsourcing app that we've developed, and I'll show you that in just a minute. We're also working with the Smithsonian Institution, the AIA, and the George Washington University Capitol Archaeological Institute to sponsor, to move the discussion beyond Syria and Iraq. There will be 8 countries discussed on World Archaeology Day, World Heritage Day, April 18th at the Hirshhorn Museum and Gardens at the Smithsonian. And this work is very important because it brings in leaders beyond the scholarly community. I'm really pleased that when one of the things that we've done as an organization, not as this project, is that we've been able to advocate for legislation that can bring about change. And this project, as a State Department funded project, cannot advocate and cannot lobby, because there are very strict rules on using executive branch money to influence Congress. I, however, am not. I'm not completely paid by this project. ASOR has been doing advocacy work for a long time, so I'm very pleased that we helped talk with members of Congress and senators to move forward a bill that provides the same protections to antiquities coming out of Syria as are provided to antiquities from Iraq. And having events in Washington like this has really promoted a greater public awareness. One more description that I'll give. I was really pleased at the annual meeting of the National Humanities Alliance. William Adams, who's the chairman of the National Endowment for Humanities, gave the plenary talk there. And he mentioned that one of the 3 innovative things the National Endowment for the Humanities was doing to fight or to address crises in today's society was the cultural work in Syria and Iraq. And he mentioned a conference that he spoke at, and he mentioned our work as one of the 3 innovative things they're doing. So holding these, other than having it nice for the chairman of the NEH to give you a shout out, letting politicians and the public know that this is important and part of what we need to support as a country is a really vital component as well. Going to turn now, Ed, we have end at 5, so about 7 more minutes and then time for questions. One of the questions that comes up a lot is there really proof that ISIL and other terrorist group, the Assad regime or the opposition, are selling looted antiquities? One of them is the people we have translating Arabic, the people selling this are blatant. There are Facebook pages in Arabic that describe these as Syrian objects for sale. This is a group of material the State Department, it was a raid from last spring. The State Department declassified this material last summer to show the public that, yes, there is indeed proof. This was the raid of mid-level leader in ISIL named Abu Sayyaf. And these are some of the objects that were discovered in this raid. Here you see documents allowing for the sale or the excavation of the objects that were being traded. This is available if you're interested or doing, I spoke with somebody earlier doing a research project. The State Department website has these documents on their website. They're all translated, and it's really interesting and very scary and depressing what you see. But here, this is one of the permission documents that is allowing this person, whose name is removed, to excavate and supervise the antiquities. And it's saying this person is in charge of these particular areas. This one then describes that it is prohibited from any brother to excavate or to give a permit without receiving the stamped permit. So unless you receive a permit from the Diwan, you're prohibited from doing that. Anyone proven to be in violation of this order, since its issuing date, is considered to be disobedient of this order and is subject to penalty in accordance to Sharia courts. Do you know what the penalty in Sharia courts would be? Either hand or head being removed from your body. So here we have proof of the systematic excavation and looting of sites. These are some of the other items that came from this raid. One of the, this is one of the colleagues that works on this project is Professor at Dartmouth, Jesse Kasana. This is published in Near Eastern Archaeology, which is a publication of ASOR. He looked at the geographic distribution of sites in the inventory we have compared to where the ISIL, Kurdish forces, the Assad regime, and the opposition forces. The other thing that he looked at was where is there severe looting, moderate looting, and minor looting. This is, since his study, this is what we have undertaken doing the same thing. And what you'll find, what Jesse found, is that the number of sites with looting in the Assad regime area, the number of looting sites is important in all of the areas. But the severe looting, look at the total, how much is in the ISIL-controlled areas. What this supports is the theory, or its corroborating evidence from this Abu Sayyaf raid, is that in the ISIL-controlled areas, they're not going out and looting a lot of sites in a small way, but the sites that they're looting seem to be looted in a very systematic manner. So look at this site that's on the Euphrates River, and then look at this inset right here. Here inset A, you see there are a lot of mounds. Here you see this several meters, probably 5 to 7 meters have been just taken off completely. What this seems to be is removing the material, sorting through it in some sort, and it's not just digging holes, it's taking away probably something the height of this ceiling here and systematically taking the objects from that. Here's another site. Again, look at these two areas with large areas just being systematically wiped away. CBS News did an investigation last summer where they sent one of our team members, Amr Al-Azam, I shouldn't say they sent him, he went with them to Turkey, and they did an undercover investigation meeting with people selling Syrian antiquities. This particular one is a mosaic that, if you go back and search from CBS News, you'll be able to find the video of this. They were offered this mosaic, and eventually, through a period of negotiation, the price came down to $70,000. And the person selling it said that it came from an area that's in ISIL-controlled areas. So this is another pretty direct evidence that people are trying to sell a spectacular find for $70,000. When I meet with students, and this was one of the questions that came up earlier, I said, well, why would people buy things from a terrorist group? A mosaic like this would be the centerpiece of any museum in Europe or the United States. It's priceless. But if you could sell it, I would imagine it would be, I have no idea what antiquities sell for, but it would be a whole lot more than $70,000. So it's like, I encouraged someone earlier not to draw, it's hard drawing parallels with the Nazis for this, but it's sort of like Nazi art. Why would people buy a Picasso if they knew it was Nazi art? Well, Picasso, I don't know what that sells for, but it's tens of millions. And if you could buy it for $50,000, would you think about doing it? I would not. I don't think any of you would, but there are people who do. And that's the same reason that I think we have proof that objects are being sold like this. As I said, I wanted to end with several glimmers of hopes and things that we're doing. We're going to be announcing in 2 weeks a new crowdsourcing app. And if you go to heritagemonitor, all one word, .org, you take your phone and do it right now, you'll see that it works. We are launching a decrypted, anonymous crowdsourcing app to allow people in zones of conflict to submit reports and share evidence of sites that are being looted or destroyed. And so we hope that we're working on, we've really spent the last 6 months spending tens of thousands of dollars making sure that this is safe and encrypted. It has a state level encryption process, so I think it's as safe as it can be. Even if someone were to get the information, we've taken all identifying information out of the post. But we are working with other international teams, and we hope that this may be a new way forward. We've received very generous funding. However, even with 9 full-time equivalent people working full-time, it's a drop in the bucket of everything that needs to take place. We're very glad to have signed a collaborative agreement with a German team doing the same thing. We're working with the British team. Our philosophy has been from the very beginning, we're going to share information even if it means we may lose the next round of grants. We're trying to do what we can to promote a international collaboration to fight this problem. However, unless we develop a way to let a larger group be involved, we're not going to be able to succeed. So this is one way that we're hopeful that we will be able to succeed. Planning for emergency and post-war responses. I said earlier that there is some hope now. The database that we've developed, we've put everything into a FileMaker Pro database. There will be once there is stabilization, these hundreds of sites that we've assessed and identified the damage will have some idea of the scope of the problem. And this will be very important because when the international communities get the countries that have money to support the rebuilding of war-torn areas, in previous conflicts, heritage specialists haven't been able to document the scope of the problem. And so by having this database, we'll be able to attract funding that will help the people of Syria and Iraq rebuild. Again, our goal is not to build a big database, it's to empower the Syrians and Iraqis in the work that will need to be done. So these are just several screenshots of that database and what they look like. Another thing that's exciting is Arches, which is a World Monuments Fund and Getty Conservation Institute funded project. We're entering all of our information in the Arches database where you can click on it and it will focus in and you can click on any one particular site and have a brief description of the damage that's taken place. So when heritage specialists go into Syria and Iraq, they will have more information there in an iPad. I'm very pleased that in about 2 weeks we'll be announcing with the Getty a collaborative agreement we've already signed. Our team is working with them to expand Arches to make it more compatible and friendly for preservation planning. And we're just really humbled and grateful that organizations as large as the World Monuments Fund and the Getty are very gladly working with us and helping to support this work. The last slide here shows the number of collaborative initiatives that we've had. These are 2 law firms. We even have lawyers who have volunteered their time in helping us study the sale of antiquities. Some of them have represented antiquities dealers and museums and auction houses, and they're saying these are the things that we feel would practically could be done to curb the sale of antiquities. So the Archaeological Institute of America and ASOR have applied for some NEH funding and have received that twice now. So this is a connection there. The German Archaeological Institute, Schuren, is a British team. The Museum for Islamic Art in Berlin. I'm going to be going to Vienna to meet with the German teams. We have signed a collaborative agreement to share our inventory of sites, and we're going to be meeting to talk about, well, how actually does that work and how can we place the GIS ARC data sets on top of each other where we can have come up with one comprehensive one. So this, I wanted to show a variety of ways that we're trying to work with other groups, and we're very thankful for the support that we have. We're always looking for more help because while it's a very big problem and we've had some generous federal funding, there's always a need for more support. I think that, yeah. So this just, if there's, I may have run almost out of time for questions, but this summarizes the work that we've been doing and the 3 parts of the project. So thank you for listening. I guess I want to before we go, just about 30 seconds. I think with the ceasefire and the possibility of stabilization becoming more possible, one of the other things we've done is undertaken a few mitigation projects. In Bashar al-Shem, in the southern part of the country, we funded the former Antiquities Department were without jobs. We've provided funding for them, first with State Department funding, then through a private foundation. These were the same people who worked in the Antiquities Department and are going in and taking pictures and putting sandbags up around monuments that are partly destroyed. Another group we've funded was to place sandbags over mosaics in a museum that is at risk because of damage from the war. The roof may collapse, and so they've used sandbags and tarps to try to protect the mosaics until the area is stabilized enough to where the museum can be rebuilt. So we're also finding, and we're very grateful, we have some private foundations and private donors who are supporting this work. And it's an area where 5,000, 10,000, tens of thousands, not millions of dollars, is really making a dramatic difference in mitigating the damage that's done and planning for the future. So it's a time of some hope, and we're just hopeful that the ceasefire holds and that we can go in and see the people of Syria and Iraq decide how to rebuild.
Thank you.